developers and being financially committed to help us do the same thing, or we could develop our own, which is a nonprofit organization.
Well, that's what Derry did. And,
yeah.
I mean, we've done things ourselves in the past, so.
No, I just wanted to talk, they said that the TIF was successful, but the biggest component of those TIFs being successful was the Derry Economic Development Corps.
Yeah, you look at different places across the, like with the Keene situation and the Concord situation, they're all a little bit different. And it really has to be tailored for the community, what the community wants.
And I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, thank you.
And also, too, in conjunction with what Deb just said, the Keene TIF district was managed by the Monadnock Economic Development Corp. as well. I mean, so corporate economic development corps are very instrumental in handling these things, but also I don't believe that the Hooksett has an economic development corp. I believe it's the town that did theirs.
It was strictly the town.
Concord has an economic development court as well.
You got to pay them? Did they get a certain percentage?
No, I mean, again, with Derry's case, I believe it's Derry. The town bought the land, but then gave it to the Economic Development Corp. But with the agreement that the Economic Development Corp would pay them back the money that they paid for the land, and from there, the TIF did what the TIF does, and the land was developed. The captured assessment is used towards paying off the bond and infrastructure that was floated by the community.
Okay. Paul, you got the floor.
Thank you. First, let me say this is the first time in 5 years that I've been on this side of the microphone. But Paul DeMarco, 30 Holstein Avenue, also on the town council.
We actually miss you, Paul. You know?
No, but it's good to see you all again.
Oh, thanks.
I guess when I think of a TIF, I think of there's the potential for something to not go well, and there's also the potential for it to be blinding success. So I wanted to kind of ask questions on both sides of those. The first is with the New Hampshire general obligation bond. So let's say the TIF, you build it and it doesn't go so well for a couple years. So now the town is generally obligated through taxation or whatever.
Yeah, in theory, the town general fund would have to support whatever payments are not sufficient to pay the bond.
Okay. Now, on the other end, like let's say it's a blinding success and our the assessed value of the property now far exceeds what the bond was. Can that bonds now be refinanced? So now it's 20 years or 10 years instead of 30 years.
Yeah, if you have excess, increment, you can prepay the bonds earlier or escrow the bonds to do that if you don't want to have the money go back to the town or whatever, but you can certainly do that. Yeah.
Okay, and I assume that would obviously be a town meeting that would make a decision like that, right? Okay, all right, thank you.
No, with regard to refinancing, if some reason, using your scenario, say the TIF is a blinding success, we're getting more money than is actually needed to pay off the debt, and we wanted to refinance it. Refinancing is not a town meeting type of issue. That's a town council ability to refinance the bond if it saves money, obviously. Yeah, we've. But again, that increment can be, if the town council or the governing body decides to, can be used to pay the debt off quicker. And one of the things that with the TIF is that the bond can be structured with payments that are not so big in the first couple of years, and to allow the project to get on its feet. And as it matures and the revenues come in, then you have the bonded debt payments, increase. That's very common to see that happen.
Okay, and I guess another question just came to mind. Has any analysis been done on maybe on some of these examples on obviously property assessments go up from year to year.
Right.
And comparing, if you had just let that land sit over the next 30 years and its assessed value go up compared to develop it and then the assessed value goes up, what the difference potentially could be?
Yeah, I think in the two that I've talked about, the properties were literally undeveloped. So there was really, the tax yield was very modest. I mean, in the Keene example, it was a cornfield or some, not a very productive use. In the Concord example, I guess it was a lumber yard that was abandoned and a mill complex that was beyond its useful life. So the current, if nothing was done, I would imagine that the property would still be in its present state.
Okay, and of course the added issue of blight and so forth.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Welcome. Yes, John, come to the microphone, please, and identify yourself for our records.
John Radigan. I didn't anticipate speaking this evening. I'm an attorney with Donahue, Tucker, and Shindella. It's an interesting topic. We do a couple of these representing our municipal clients each year. I'll give you an example. Peterborough, as many of you may know, they have a community hospital. The hospital needs to expand, and there's terrible vehicle access to the community hospital. They got a traffic. It's a bad intersection, kind of where 202 and Sand Hill Road come in. So, and the community wanted to be more competitive, to be able to attract, physicians to keep their practices there, to increase employment. So, what Peterborough did was they used a TIF district that allowed them to get community development funds to build the roadway access. The hospital entirely guaranteed the repayment under the TIF district bond obligation. So we borrowed a couple $1 million. I think we got about $1 million in CDBG development grant funds. And so it's about a $3 million project. It's not a big project, but it allowed the community hospital to do something that was very important for the community, which was to expand and continue to serve the community, serve its mission. It allowed Peterborough to increase employment. They made certain employment commitments, and it also allowed the town to solve a traffic problem. So, we look at, right, I and Andre and Tim know this, I mean, TIF's a tool. It's something to have in your bag so that as you go about your planning mission and you're trying to think about what it is that you want to achieve, you say, well, can a TIF district maybe help us? In this particular interest, there was no downside because they guaranteed all the payments, and we know the hospital is going to be there. This will make them more stable. So that's an example of a non-for-profit opportunity where we use the district to a good public purpose effect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mike?
Hi, Mike Brown, also Town Council. Bill, nice presentation.
Thank you.
It is Bill, right?
That's correct,
Yeah.
yep.
Thanks very much. Question, on one slide, the TIF policy and credit criteria. Is there any difference in your experience of TIF examples when it's completely undeveloped land versus land that has some development?
Yeah, it's inherently, well, I mean, in New Hampshire, again, because you have the GO backing, it's kind of tough. But in other states, doing a TIF on spec, the town decides, hey, we've got this undeveloped land, let's put some roads, and maybe someone will come and build something. Those are highly speculative, and in this market, getting those type of things financed are not very likely. You've got to have a partner with you at the table to get something off the ground nowadays.
If that land is considered to be close to something that's desirable, in other words, if that land, if the undeveloped land is adjacent to an area that typically would generate growth, would that change that?
Yeah, that would
Okay.
Make it a little bit more. Again, allow investors to make a more meaningful estimate of the future revenue that would come from that area. So that would
Okay.
help.
Another question is your thoughts, based on your experience, on the timing of floating a TIF, and I'll just say floating as a word, in an economy such as this versus more robust times. How does that play?
Obviously today everything's getting a much closer look at because of the credit considerations. Fortunately for the town, because your credit rating is in a AA category,
Yep.
it's not something to be overly concerned about. But if you were in the low A or B category, I would have some reservations about moving forward with a project like that, because there are some communities around the country, some that I work with here in New England, that their access to the capital markets isn't as good nowadays, and probably isn't going to be good for a few years. But
Yeah.
that's a very good point.
Okay.
But because the town's in a AA category, you have the benefits of living here, the growing tax base, and
Yeah.
the industry and
The
commercial
interest rates
development.
we've been getting.
Yeah,
have
you've been,
very competitive. Yeah.
I think last January we did the bond issue for 10 years for the town. It was under 4%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're pleased with the financial
yeah, no,
condition.
but yeah, you're right. Community that say doesn't have a bond rating or has an undesirable bond rating, I would have some concerns about
Okay.
in this market.
Last question, there was a bullet on pay-as-you-go TIF, and you may have alluded to it in a subsequent.
Yeah, that's basically rather than financing the improvements through
Yep.
a bond or a long-term bond, it's literally cash in, cash out. As the revenue comes in from the development
Okay.
district, say it's $200,000 a year
Right.
in captured value, you're just spending $200,000 a year in improvements